monster of the skies, a true apex predator that fears nothing, the lopperbeak. Several tons of hunger and cruelty. The citizens of Kandagiri live in fear of these monstrous birds, but an individual has been discovered who can control them. An expedition has been formed to learn more. With famed explorer Jayan in tow, their quest is clear. Can someone ride the lopperbeak? Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. This week I'm going back and touching on some series that I started early on. This week I'm picking up with the first series I started, Kumasagi. But first I have a quick announcement. I'm running a character creation contest on Minds. Aside from the prizes of free tokens and an autographed copy of the book, I'm also offering a chance for people to get their characters put into the last book of the Battle Game series. If you're interested, please follow the link in the description. Now back to the matter at hand. Kumasagi Part 2, Kandagiri. If you saw my first review of the Kumasagi series, you'll realize that it's named after a position of authority, namely the second in command of their religious order. Kandagiri is actually a region of their nation. This is normally where I would warn about spoilers ahead for the last book, but aside from a few things like the demographic crisis and how their government works, there's not many spoilers in the second book. It could almost be a standalone. There is one minor spoiler. Jayan, the Kumasagi's brother and avid naturist, leaves to go on an expedition based on rumors about giant predatory birds named lopperbeaks and somebody appearing who can control them. Jayan, being an associate professor, convinces the leadership at his university to make this expedition into a sort of pseudo-class. To get away with his ruse, he brings along 4 students. The expedition is the idea of and staged by a man named Padir. Padir also brought his son Sopan and gifts for the Amalas, spiritual leaders, from his own personal Blackrock mines. I want to touch a little on Blackrock as it's a pretty cool concept. Blackrock in this world is a naturally occurring ore. It quickly absorbs light from the sun and reaches a temperature high enough to cook on. Padir owns the mine where this mineral can be found, and given some context from the book, it seems to be a relatively new discovery. Back to the expedition. Padir brought 6 of his own men, former miners who he trained to paddle his canoes. It's stated he's brought several on before, but only keeps those that do the best job. The expedition gives us a better look into the world, as the first book took place exclusively in Shakti Lake City. The expedition passes through several small towns and more notable smaller cities, one of which is Ora Serena. Here we meet Amala Mirigar, who we will touch on more later. During the expedition, they lose one of the students to what's called the cracking disease, which I'm going to be honest sounds absolutely awful the way it was described. It basically amounts to the skin gets so dry that it starts to crack in several places and can't be stopped. They're forced to leave this student behind and one other to see to him, bringing the total students on the expedition down to 2. After much more canoeing and a several-day journey through a dark cave, they finally arrive in North Kandagiri, but their journey is still not over. From there, they have to take a day or 2 journey down to Nikapur, a small oceanside city. Here is where we start to feel the effects of the lopperbeaks. All the houses, gardens, and roadways are protected by long spiked palisades and abatis. You also get your first look at a lopperbeak skeleton, the description of which made me think of a gutted airplane. Here is where we meet the man who can control the lopperbeaks, Shigeran. Shigeran is a troubled young man. He's very much the loner type, but it's revealed to us he discovered his power a few years ago when a lopperbeak attacked his father, grabbing him by the leg. Shigeran forced the bird to let go, then commanded it to fly high into the air and crash headfirst into the ground, instantly killing it. These are the stories that brought the expedition here. Now I want to take a moment to talk about the lopperbeaks themselves. If you're familiar with D&D, you're probably familiar with a creature called the Rock, a giant bird that feeds on pretty much everything because it's bigger than everything. The lopperbeaks are a slightly scaled down version of that, but with a large, flat, disc-like beak. It's described later in the book when they try to put a saddle on one, just how big they are. They're trying to saddle a relatively small one, and yet they still require stepladders in order to even throw the saddle across its back. These birds also eat pretty much anything, but their favorite food is sea frogs. Now I want you to focus on the idea of a giant ocean-dwelling frog and how terrifying that would actually be if you knew anything about frogs. Now imagine an even larger bird that preys on them as a delicacy. But lopperbeaks don't seem content to just attack whatever moves below them. They also have a propensity to bully and attack and kill each other. You get a very good sense for just how monstrous these birds are. The point where they start saddling the lopperbeak and trying their experiments is about the halfway point of the book. So I'm going to stop hitting the narrative here to avoid any spoilers. But this is really where the pace of the book starts to pick up. And there are a few more things I want to cover. Coming back to Amala Mirigar. She is Jayan's grandmother, so to speak. The Amala who sired his mother. Now, Jayan and Najat from the last book were born on Sindaput Island. And this island seems to have only had 2 destins in a very, very long time. And it was Mirigar who left Kandagiri to sire these 2 destins. She also spent a lot of Jayan and Najat's early years with them, it seems. Mirigar is also Padir, the expedition leader's former lover, and it seems this went on for quite a while until Padir bought himself a wife. A wife who Mirigar comments has her same hair, her same skin, and he has never brought to see her. Bringing your wife to see the Amala seems to be the custom. She's also responsible for something that will always haunt my nightmares. There's a part in the book where Padir's mind turns to Mirigar, and he thinks it's just an errant thought. As it turns out, it's her reaching out and checking on him mentally. So now I can have that little bit of paranoia nipping at the back of my mind for the rest of my life. Jayan also reveals to Mirigar that he has discovered a destin pool after she wheedles it out of him. The wild destin that Jayan discovered is apparently not very attractive. He says she looks too much like a fish. At no point in this book have we run across a destin who looks like this. And Mirigar is in a very big hurry to send people out to the pool, mystics to shed and seed the pool, which leads me to believe this has a profound effect on the looks and attributes of the destins in the pools. I also want to touch on one final thing. The initial crisis from the last book was one of demographics. There's just not enough children being born. The general populace doesn't seem too concerned about this. But upon the mention of a new destin pool, Mirigar is beside herself with sending someone out. It leads me to believe that the elites are hiding the demographic crisis from the general population, and are desperately searching for a way to fix it without having the public become aware. All in all, this was an enjoyable read about one man's crazy dream to fly. If you enjoyed this review, please like, share, and subscribe. If you're an independent author who would like a review of your book, please follow the link in the description and leave links to where your book can be purchased and where people can get in touch with you. Thank you.